The traditional Chinese character party consists of two radicals, advocate and black. Confucius said, "The superior man has friends but does not belong to a clique." In Chinese history, party or party member, which can also be interpreted as gang or gang member, carries a derogatory meaning. The Communist Party emerged, grew, and eventually seized power in contemporary China. The CCP has constantly instilled into the people's minds that history chose the CCP, and that, without the CCP, there would be no new China. Did the Chinese people choose the Communist Party, or did the Communist Party gang up and force the Chinese people to accept it? Let us review China's history in the 20th century to seek the real answers. From the late Qing dynasty, China experienced tremendous external shocks and extensive attempts at internal reform. The entire Chinese society was in disarray. Discontented with the then reality, many people with lofty ideals wanted to save the country and its people, and looked for a solution. When the British and French styles failed, they switched to the Russian method. Like people who turned to any available doctor in times of illness, they did not hesitate to prescribe the most extreme remedy for the illness, in the hope that China would quickly become strong. Some people advocated anarchism, others proposed to overthrow the doctrines of Confucius, and still others suggested bringing in foreign culture. In 1918, the first Communist Party in the world was officially formed in Russia. In order to achieve the revolutionary goal of conquering the whole world, the Soviet Union established the Far Eastern Bureau in 1920. It then started to look for comrades in China. The idea of using violent revolution to seize political power, lifted from the theory of Marxism-Leninism, appealed to the anxious minds of the group of young people. Under such circumstances, communism, a completely foreign concept, was introduced into China. The founders of the CCP did not realize that the deity they had introduced from the Soviet Union was in reality an evil specter, and the remedy they sought for strengthening the nation was actually a deadly poison. It was not an easy task to introduce the foreign and evil specter into China, a country with a history of 5,000 years of civilization. The CCP deceived the populace and the intellectuals with the promise of the so-called communist utopia. The CCP inherited communism's denial of private ownership, imported Lenin's theory of violent revolution, and adopted the Industrial Revolution's destruction of belief. At the same time, the CCP inherited and further strengthened the worst parts of the Chinese monarchy. The Communist Party presented the fantasy of a communist paradise as the truth, and aroused people's enthusiasm to fight for it. Employing such an absolutely absurd idea, the CCP severed the connections between humanity and Earth and cut the lifeline that connects the Chinese people to their ancestors and national traditions. By summoning people to give their lives for communism, the CCP strengthened its ability to do harm. The communist movement was introduced to China as an experiment. The CCP's success in defeating other theories and eventually gaining control of the entire Chinese nation comes from its cruel, evil, and violent nature. The history of the CCP is a process of its accumulation of every kind of wickedness. In this process, the CCP has continuously perfected its 9 inherited traits: evil, deceit, incitement, fighting, robbery, unleashing the scum of society, espionage, elimination, and control. Responding to continuous crises, the CCP has consolidated and strengthened the means and extent to which these malignant characteristics have been playing out. The CCP acknowledges that it is a religion imported from other countries. From ideology to experience, from organization to capital, everything is brought in from the Soviet Union. It carried out the imperialism of the Russian Red Army, following the Soviet Party on everything. From the beginning, the CCP was a traitorous party. In July 1921, the CCP was officially formed. As the China branch of the Comintern, the CCP began to receive funding from the Comintern, beginning in October 1921. According to statistics available from declassified party documents, during the period from 1924 to 1927, the contribution from the Comintern averaged around 20,000 yuan per month. At the Second National Congress of the CCP in July 1922, there were only 195 CCP members across all of China. The Comintern criticized the CCP for not working diligently. Based on the All-Russian Communist Party's experience, it ordered the CCP to join the KMT. The CCP made itself bigger and more powerful through the KMT and won people's hearts through participating in the National Revolution movement. With the support of the Soviet Union, the CCP wantonly seized political power within the KMT during the alliance. Among the KMT ministers, CCP member Tan Pingshan became the Minister of the Central Personnel Department. Mao Zedong assumed the position of Acting Minister of the Propaganda Department. Zhou Enlai held the position of Director of the Political Department of the Huangpu Military Academy. Lin Zuhan was the Minister of Rural Affairs. Many communists served as KMT party representatives at various levels of the National Revolutionary Army. The number of the CCP members increased dramatically from 420 in 1923 to 30,000 by 1928. The CCP members who joined the KMT did not obey the KMT rules. They publicly aired their views, attacking the KMT. They breached their promises and organized and expanded an underground CCP within the KMT. In January 1925, when the CCP only had 994 members, it had already raised the question of who would have leadership in China. Had Sun Yat-sen not died, he, instead of Chiang Kai-shek, would have been the target of the CCP in its quest for power. Human nature universally repels violence. Violence makes people insane, ruthless, and tyrannical. Marxist-Leninist violent revolution and dictatorship of the proletariat promote power politics and proletarian domination. Proletarians use violent struggles to seize political power. The Communist Manifesto clearly declared that their ends could be attained only by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. That is, to use violent revolution to destroy the old state apparatus and to establish a dictatorship of the proletariat. This is the root of evil in Marxism and Leninism. Evil is the main character trait that the Marxist-Leninist spectre passed on to the CCP. It is the root of all evils. In order to overthrow the warlords and restore peace that people had been expecting for so long, the KMT government began the Northern Expedition in February 1926. Ignoring the people's wishes and interests, the CCP used all kinds of schemes and intrigues to sabotage the Northern Expedition in order to seize political power. From October 1926 to March 1927, the CCP launched 3 armed rebellions in Shanghai. During the Northern Expedition, they distributed flyers everywhere, put up banners, and organized workers to strike. Picket squads of workers, organized by the CCP, engaged in violent conflicts with the police almost daily. The KMT government had to assign the army to assist maintaining social order. The KMT became impatient with the CCP's blatant provocation and decided to thoroughly purge its members. On April 12, 1927, the National Revolutionary Army disarmed the workers' picket squads in Shanghai and took over the Shanghai General Labor Union, which was the CCP's rebellion headquarters in Shanghai. At that point, the first CCP-KMT alliance was declared a failure and ended in blood and slaughter. However, the CCP twisted the facts and accused Chiang Kai-shek of betraying the revolution. When the National Revolutionary Army was at war with the warlords, the CCP was advocating peasants to rebel and to confiscate land from its owners in the rural areas. Between April and May in 1927, under the banner of "The Peasant Association has supreme authority," the entire area of Hunan province was shrouded in red terror, with violent mobs instigating rebellions all over. CCP leader Li Lisan's father was killed by the Peasant Association. National Revolutionary Army Corps Commander He Zhan's father was paraded around and publicly criticized until his death. The family members of middle and lower class officers and soldiers from the Northern Expedition Army were also killed. The horrible sight of it was very similar to that of the Cultural Revolution, when countless other people were tormented. This is the well-known Hunan peasant movement. The deeply rooted patriarchal clan system in the Chinese countryside served as a fundamental barrier to the Communist Party's establishment of political power. The rural society initially had a harmonious relationship between the landowners and tenants. Landowners lent land to peasants so that they could make a living, and in return, the peasants paid rent to support the landowners. This somewhat mutually dependent relationship was twisted by the CCP into extreme class antagonism and class exploitation. The CCP took advantage of the rebellion of social scum and hoodlums in the rural areas to establish the CCP's new social order for the revolution. These scum of society were praised by Mao Zedong as the bravest and firmest in the revolution in the rural areas. Unleashing the scum of society and robbery became the second and third inherited traits of the CCP. Taking advantage